Leonard Shaw was sitting in the back row of the community center when the John Deere dealer stood up and said the words that would change everything. It was March 1981, just another Farm Bureau meeting in central Kansas, until Dennis Kramer decided to tell everyone exactly who was destroying American agriculture. And he was looking straight at Leonard. Dennis owned the biggest equipment dealership in 3 counties. He sponsored these meetings, brought charts and graphs, talked about turbocharged engines and return on investment. Tonight, he had statistics about the new John Deere 4040 and why every serious farmer needed one. Then he said it. If you're still farming with equipment from the 50s and 60s, you're not a serious farmer. You're a hobbyist. The room went silent. You're too poor to farm right, and you're holding back the entire industry. Leonard felt every eye in that room shift toward him. Everyone knew Dennis was talking about him. Leonard was 43 years old, farming 400 acres with a 1956 Farmall and a 1963 International. Ancient equipment, paid-for equipment. He could have walked out. Instead, he stood up. "Dennis, I've got a question for you." The dealer turned, surprised. "How much debt do your customers carry on average for their equipment?" Dennis blinked. "I don't see how that's relevant." "Just answer the question." The room was watching now. "Average equipment debt, ballpark figure." Dennis shifted. "It varies. Depends on operation size. Give me a number." "Probably 60 to 80,000 for a full line of modern equipment." Leonard nodded slowly. "And what are the monthly payments on that?" 12 to 1,500 a month, maybe more." "Okay. So your average customer is sending the bank $1,500 every single month for 5 to 7 years. Whether they have a good crop or bad crop, whether it rains or doesn't rain, that payment comes due no matter what." Dennis's jaw tightened. "That's how financing works, Leonard. But they're getting modern, efficient equipment in return." "Right. Modern equipment." Leonard looked around the room. "How many farmers in this county have lost their operations in the last 5 years?" Silence. "I'll tell you, 17. I went to 12 of those auctions. Watched good farmers lose everything. You know what almost every one of them had in common?" The room was holding its breath. Brand new John Deere equipment purchased from your dealership, financed through your bank, with payments they couldn't make when times got hard. "Now, Dennis, that's not fair," someone started. "Let me finish," Leonard said. "Dennis just told us that farmers with old equipment are too poor to farm right, that we're hobbyists, that will be gone in 10 years. He looked directly at the dealer. "I own my 400 acres free and clear. Bought it in 1967 for $78,000. Paid it off by 1975. I own my equipment. Every tractor, every implement, paid for in cash. I have no debt. Zero." The room was absolutely silent. "Which means when I have a bad year, I don't lose my farm. I just have a bad year and keep farming." "Your customers, Dennis? They're one drought away from bankruptcy, one price crash away from foreclosure, one bad decision away from losing everything 3 generations built. And you're standing up here telling me I'm too poor to farm, right?" Leonard sat down. Dennis tried to continue his presentation, but the energy was gone. The meeting broke up 20 minutes later, but it was what happened in the parking lot that really mattered. Dennis Kramer walked up to Leonard, face red, hands clenched. "You embarrassed me in there. You called me out in front of everyone I know. You called farmers like me too poor to farm right," I responded. "Don't dish it out if you can't take it back." Dennis stepped closer. "You think you're so smart with your paid-off equipment and your debt-free farm. But you're farming 400 acres with tractors older than your kids. My customers are running 1,000-acre operations with modern equipment. They're the future. You're the past. We'll see, Leonard said. Check back in 10 years. See who's still farming and who's not. Dennis got in his truck and drove away, and Leonard Shaw went home and started planning how he was going to prove that son of a bitch wrong. Because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Leonard had bought his farm in 1967 when he was 29, right after 2 years in Vietnam. 400 acres of decent Kansas ground for $78,000. His father helped with $20,000 down. Leonard financed the rest at 7%, then worked construction during the day and farmed evenings and weekends. He lived cheap, saved aggressively, made extra payments whenever he could. By 1975, the farm was paid off, 8 years to clear the debt. 8 years of discipline and refusing to buy anything he didn't absolutely need. His equipment was old, even then. The 1956 Farmall he'd bought used for $4,500 in 1968. The 1963 International he'd picked up at auction for $3,800 in 1971. Both paid for in cash. Both maintained meticulously. Some farmers joked that Leonard spent more time fixing his equipment than using it. What they didn't understand was that Leonard was learning. Every hour rebuilding a transmission was an hour he didn't have to pay a mechanic. Every bearing he replaced himself was $50 he kept instead of gave away. In 1981, Leonard was farming his 400 acres, netting about $15,000 a year. Not spectacular, but steady. Enough to live on, enough to save, enough to be content. His neighbors were farming bigger. 800 acres, 1,000 acres, running 3 and 4 tractors. They looked more successful from the outside. But Leonard knew something they didn't seem to understand. They were drowning in debt. After that Farm Bureau meeting, after Dennis Kramer called him too poor to farm right, Leonard decided to stop being content with 400 acres. He decided to show everyone what too poor to farm right could actually build. The opportunity came in October 1982. A farm 2 miles down the road went up for sale. The owner had died. His kids lived in California and wanted nothing to do with Kansas dirt. 240 acres, listed for $80,000. They expected it to take months to sell. Leonard made them an offer 3 days after it listed. $72,000 cash. Close in 2 weeks. The kids took it immediately. Leonard borrowed $40,000 against his paid-off farm at 6%. Put $32,000 cash from his savings. Closed in 12 days. Suddenly, he owned 640 acres. But he also had a mortgage again. $40,000 at 6% over 15 years. Monthly payment, $337. Every farmer Leonard knew said the same thing. You bought new land, but you're still farming with those old tractors. When are you going to upgrade your equipment? Leonard's answer was simple. When the land is paid off. He wasn't going to make the mistake of owing money on both land and equipment. One or the other, never both. Here's where it gets interesting. Farming 640 acres with 2 old tractors meant long days. Leonard would start at sunrise, work until dark, cover maybe 25 acres a day. Modern farmers with their 4-bottom plows could do the same work in half the time. But Leonard didn't care about time. He cared about payments. His monthly obligations were minimal, $337 for the land mortgage. That was it. No equipment payments, no operating loans, no credit cards. Then, 1983 brought drought. Yields were down 40% across the county. Farmers with high overhead struggled. Some couldn't make their payments. Leonard's income dropped from $15,000 to $9,000 that year. But his expenses were so low, he still cleared enough to make his land payment and live on. In 1984, prices crashed. Wheat dropped from $4 a bushel to $2.70. Farmers who'd planted assuming good prices found themselves in trouble. Leonard made his payment, kept farming. The farm crisis was hitting hard by 1985. Foreclosures were happening monthly, equipment auctions every other weekend. And that's when Leonard made his move. A 1958 John Deere diesel sold for $1,800. Leonard bought it, spent $400 on parts, had a third working tractor for $2,200 total. A 5-bottom plow sold for $600. Leonard bought it. An 8-row planter went for $900. Leonard bought that too. While everyone else was losing equipment, Leonard was accumulating it, paying cash, buying at auction prices, building capability without taking on debt. By 1986, Leonard had 3 tractors and a full line of implements. Total invested over 4 years, about $8,000, all paid in cash. A comparable modern setup would have cost $80,000 and required financing. Then in 1987, another farm came available. The Johnson place, 320 acres. The family had been there for 3 generations, but the 3rd generation couldn't make the payments on equipment they'd financed in the early 80s. Bank foreclosed. Everything went to auction. Starting bid, $60,000. Leonard bid $62,000. Nobody countered. He got it. He went back to his bank, showed them his payment history, showed them he'd never been late on a single payment in 5 years. They approved increasing his mortgage to $98,000 total, 15 years at 7%. Monthly payment, $880. Higher than before, but still manageable. And now Leonard owned 960 acres. Dennis Kramer heard about it. Drove out to Leonard's place one afternoon. "Leonard, I heard you bought the Johnson land." "I did." "You're farming nearly 1,000 acres now with tractors from the 50s and 60s. When are you going to admit you need modern equipment?" Leonard smiled. "When I can't make it work with what I have. So far, I'm making it work fine." "You could be so much more efficient, Dennis." Efficiency means different things to different people. To you, it means acres covered per hour. To me, it means dollars kept per acre. I'm very efficient at keeping dollars. Dennis shook his head. "You're leaving money on the table." "Maybe. But I'm not sending money to your bank every month either. So I'll take my version of efficiency over yours." Dennis left frustrated. And Leonard kept farming, kept buying land when opportunities arose, kept refusing to finance equipment. By 1990, Leonard Shaw owned 1,200 acres. 4 different parcels, all purchased at below-market prices from estate sales or foreclosures. Total mortgage, only $130,000. Monthly payment just over $1,000. Still farming with auction-bought tractors. The oldest from 1956. The newest, a 1972 International he'd bought for $4,500 in 1989. "Leonard, how are you doing this?" one neighbor asked at the co-op. "Buying land. Every few years you buy another farm. The rest of us can barely hang on to what we've got." Leonard shrugged. "I don't spend money on equipment payments. Every dollar I save goes into land. Land appreciates, equipment depreciates. Seemed like an easy choice. But your equipment is ancient. My equipment is paid for. Big difference." The turning point came in 1995. Dennis Kramer's dealership was struggling. The farm crisis had killed off most of his customer base. The farmers who survived were gun-shy about taking on new debt. Sales were down, way down. Dennis had to sell the dealership to a larger operation out of Wichita. He kept his job as manager, but the ownership was gone. At the same time, Leonard Shaw hit a milestone. In October 1995, he made his final mortgage payment, 14 years after buying the Patterson place. 13 years after the Farm Bureau meeting where Dennis called him too poor to farm right. Leonard owned 1,200 acres free and clear, worth about $600,000 at 1995 land prices, zero debt. A local newspaper did a story. Debt-free farmer builds empire with antique equipment. The article mentioned the 1981 Farm Bureau meeting, mentioned Dennis Kramer's comment about farmers with old equipment being too poor to farm right. Someone mailed a copy to Dennis at the dealership. A week later, Dennis drove out to Leonard's farm. He looked older, tired, worn down by years of watching his business model collapse. He found Leonard working on his 1963 International in the machine shed. "Leonard, got a minute?" Leonard stood up, wiped his hands on a rag. "Sure, Dennis. What's on your mind?" "I read the article, the one in the paper." Silence. "You were right. Back in '81 at that meeting, you were right, and I was wrong." Leonard didn't say anything, just waited. "I spent 20 years telling farmers they needed new equipment. That debt was just a tool. That modern meant better. And I watched most of my customers either go broke or come close to it. Meanwhile, he gestured around at Leonard's farm. "You built this with junk I told you was worthless." "It wasn't junk, Dennis. It was paid-off equipment. There's a difference." "I know that now. Took me long enough to figure it out." They stood there in silence for a moment. "Why did you come out here?" Leonard finally asked. "To apologize. For calling you too poor to farm right. For being so damn sure I knew better than you did. For pushing debt on farmers who couldn't afford it." Leonard nodded slowly. "Apology accepted." Dennis held out his hand. Leonard shook it. "One more thing," Dennis said. "If you ever need parts for those old tractors of yours, come see me. I'll get you dealer cost. It's the least I can do." After Dennis left, Leonard went back to working on his tractor. But he was smiling, because in the end, he'd proven exactly what he set out to prove. That owning things mattered more than using impressive things. That debt-free farming wasn't backwards, it was the smartest path forward. That too poor to farm right was actually too smart to farm wrong. Leonard Shaw is 86 years old now, retired from active farming. He signed the operation over to his son in 2008. The farm is 2,200 acres now. His son bought additional land over the years, following Leonard's philosophy. Pay cash when possible. Finance only land, never equipment, and never carry more debt than you can service in a bad year. The equipment? Still mostly older tractors. A few from the 80s and 90s now. All bought used, all paid for. The operation works. Not fancy, not modern by some standards, but profitable and sustainable. Sitting in Leonard's machine shed, preserved and maintained, is the 1956 Farmall 400. The tractor that was there the night Dennis Kramer called Leonard too poor to farm right. The tractor that helped prove him wrong. Leonard takes his grandchildren out there sometimes, tells them the story. "This tractor cost me $4,500 in 1968. I farmed with it for 40 years. It helped me buy 6 different parcels of land. It was called outdated and worthless, and a sign that I didn't know what I was doing. But this tractor never asked me for a monthly payment, never demanded money I didn't have, never threatened to put me out of business if I couldn't pay." He pauses, looks at his grandkids. "The dealer said I was too poor to farm right, but I used this tractor to build something that outlasted his dealership, outlasted most of his customers, and proved that sometimes the poorest way to farm is to send all your money to the bank." His granddaughter asks the obvious question. "Grandpa, did you ever think about buying new equipment?" Just once? Leonard smiles. Every time I made a land payment instead of an equipment payment, I thought about it. And every time I chose the land. Because at the end of 40 years, I own 2,200 acres. And you can farm that with any tractor that runs. But if I'd spent that money on equipment, I'd have a pile of worn-out modern machinery and 400 acres. Easy choice, really. So let me leave you with this. Right now, someone's trying to tell you that you're doing it wrong, that your equipment is too old, that you're too poor to do it right, that you need to spend money you don't have on things you don't need to look successful. But Leonard Shaw proved something different. He proved that the people who call you poor for not going into debt are often the ones making money off your debt. That equipment salesmen have every incentive to make you feel inadequate with what you have. That real wealth isn't looking rich, it's being free. The John Deere dealer called him too poor to farm right in 1981. By 1995, Leonard owned 1,200 acres debt-free. Today, his family farms 2,200 acres, all following the same philosophy. Own what you use, don't owe what you have, and never confuse impressive with successful. The dealer's customers? Most of them are gone. Foreclosed, sold out, moved on. But Leonard Shaw is still there. Still debt-free. Still farming with old equipment that works. Still proving every single day that too poor to farm right was actually too smart to farm wrong. If this story changed how you think about equipment, debt, and what success really means, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment. Have you ever been called too poor to do something right when really you were too smart to do it wrong? Share this with someone who's being told they need to upgrade, modernize, or finance something they can't afford. The dealer said old equipment meant you were too poor to farm right. Leonard used that old equipment to buy more land than everyone who mocked him. And that's the difference between looking successful and being successful. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.